Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Daydream Nation, and I've got Bicyclelegs back to the channel. How are you, my mate?
Yeah, it's a good little bit chilly by Brisbane standards, but it's good. I like it.
Oh, a lot warmer than Sydney, that's for sure. We are going to talk about a band that probably a little bit ignored, a bit forgotten in 2023, and we're talking about a New Zealand band, My6. Now, My6 were quite big for a couple of years, especially in the Australian pop charts around circa 79 to about 1982. They had a number one hit with a song in 1979 called Computer Games, which was at the top of the charts for like 4 to 5 weeks, and a number of hits after that. How would I describe My6? My6 were a perfect combination of new wave, alternative, and a little bit of pub rock thrown in. And we'll go more into the sort of the genres that this particular band did cover. What we'll do is we'll cover their 4 albums that were recorded on the CBS label from 1979 to 1984. Bicyclelegs and I will choose our 2 favorite songs of each album, round robin, and then Bicyclelegs, you might touch upon the current incarnation of My6, what you think of their last album, and we'll wrap it up from there. So why don't we start off with the 1979 album Graffiti Crimes. So this hit the New Zealand charts at number 6 and the Australian charts at number 1. And it was probably propelled to that status with the Computer Games album. So Bicyclelegs, hit me with your 2 favorite songs off that album.
Interesting little fun fact for your viewers is that there are actually 2 versions of this album. It was originally released without Computer Games on it. And then when Computer Games was released as a standalone single, was a huge hit, they re-released it with Computer Games on it and with the pipe sticker and all that, sort of pointing out that Computer Games was on it. This is probably my favorite album by them. Was very difficult. I really could have chosen anything on this album. But what I've gone with, the first one I'm going to go with is Not Such a Bad Boy, which I think is it's a bit of a deeper album cut. The various genres you were touching on, sort of new wave, pub rock, that sort of thing. With this one, you get very new wave feel with the guitars, I think. But with the keyboards, I actually get a little bit of prog on this song. There's a little bit of a sort of a bubbly, proggy kind of thing going on with the keyboards on this song, which is why I chose it. The other one, I mean, I could have gone with But You Don't Care, which I think is a great song. The title track's really, really good too. 2120. But in the end, I have to go with Computer Games because it's just an undeniable song. That song was a number 1 hit here for a reason. It's just ridiculously catchy. It's just absolutely as new wave as you get, which just, absolutely right up my sort of alley as far as, the very first music I ever got into as a young wee lad was new wave music. So I had to go with Computer Games as my other choice. So yeah, those are my 2.
Nice. It's interesting you should say that because My6 did start off as a prog band.
Yeah.
And going back a little bit further, the lead singer, Steve Gilpin, was actually a little bit of a pop singer in New Zealand. So he won a New Faces, which is one of those talent shows in New Zealand in 1972. He was kind of a pop star. A couple of incarnations of the band, which were very proggy, and then they evolved into this new wave type of band. And the name My6 actually originates from an Ultravox album when they were under John Fox, Ultravox with an exclamation mark. So they definitely wore their new wave hard on their strings. Graffiti Crimes for me, mate. I love that song. It's a Bobby Dazzler. It's a great opening track. It starts off with this haunting Ultravox synth line, and then it goes into this pulsating guitar-driven rocker. So I find with My Six, there's this beautiful blend of crunchy guitars a la pub rock and new wave. And a lot of my friends, older friends that actually saw My Six in the day, he described them as being very punky and very heavy live and a great live act. And what limited footage I've seen on YouTube is a testimony that they were definitely really good live, but had a bit of a harder edge. But Graffiti Crimes, I like the line. It's got balls, it's written on the walls, graffiti crimes in the shopping malls. And it was a little bit of a kind of a topic about graffiti art being very popular in the late 70s and early 80s. The other one I was going to pick is But You Don't Care, the singles. That hit number 33 in New Zealand, number 25 in Australia. It's catchy. It's got a bit of melancholy. It starts off with this melancholy synth pattern, and then Gilpin's vocals come in, and it's sort of almost a power pop rocker. It's almost, kind of in that genre of power pop.
Yeah.
But I love the synth lines in this album all the way through. And I find there's a bit of Gary Newman in this album, and maybe even more so in the next one that we're going to cover. I can see that they may be gazing across into the UK and seeing what's happening over there and taking it a notch further. I don't know, but I always find that this album is a kind of a counterpart to some of Gary Newman's work, maybe the Replicants or the Pleasure Principle, maybe a year or two earlier than that. Anyway, Graffiti Crimes and But You Don't Care. And I think this is it's a mighty fine album. And viewers, if a funny thing, I've seen this in record stores to this day. I don't think it's gone out of print, Bicyclelegs. I think it's still on vinyl and on CD. Like there's a lot of albums from those days, they just get deleted. I think that's constantly ticks over. I've never not seen that in the record stores.
Yeah, there's certainly, I know on CD, there's a 3-pack you can get of the first 3 My Sex albums. And then you can pick that up pretty cheap. So it's a great investment if you're wanting to get into the band and really sort of explore the music, because the first 3 for me are probably the strongest 3 anyway. So
absolutely. Okay, so we'll go to 1980, and this is probably my personal favorite album, Bicyclelegs, of their 4, and that's the Space Race. It's not called the Space Race, but Space Race.
Yeah.
So very futuristic. A lot of Gary Newman, a lot of new wave, but with that rocky edge. What are your favorite tracks of this album?
Yeah, this is a very close second for me. I probably just slightly prefer the debut, but it's very close. I mean, these two are very much of a pair. They're produced by the same guy. So they have a consistent sound over the two of them. And those little aliens on the back, apparently when this album was coming out, they were sort of popping up here, there, and everywhere as sort of like a promotional stunt. So that's a nifty little thing to know. But the two that I've gone for is title track, Space Race. It's got a bit of a computer games vibe to it, but I think it's original enough that it's not just sort of like a sort of dumbed down sequel. I think it's a really great follow-up. And the other one I went for is Ghosts.
Right.
Ghosts, to me, it has a really sort of wonderful new wave sound, which this whole album does. There's a really good guitar solo in this song, though. It's what really sort of plucked it out for me out of all the other tracks. Because again, I could have gone with virtually anything on this album, but Ghosts was the one that I really sort of, as I was re-listening to these albums, it sort of made me prick up my ears and think, ooh, that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the two I'm going for.
Yeah, Kevin Stanton on guitar, some really tasty licks. Really. I mean, the performances on both albums are outstanding. And I'll a bit of a shout out to the producer, which was Peter Dawkins. Peter Dawkins was actually the producer extraordinaire in the late 70s. He did work for Dragon, Air Supply, Wings of an Eagle, Russell Morris, Matt Finnish, Short Note, Little Heroes, and one of your favorites, Pseudo Echo. So his CV is very impressive. And the production on this album is really, really spick. Space Race, love it. I like it. It's got a lot of social commentary about governments wanting to win and just succeeding, and in respect of technology at all costs. It's got that metronomic marching band drum pattern, and the guitars are just following the synth line all the way through. But it's very Gary Newman-esque, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And this album did really well in Australia. They were certainly not a one-album wonder. This went to number 5, and it hit the top spot in New Zealand. So I think about 79, 80, they were definitely at the peak of their commercial success.
Yeah.
And it did help when you had those little Close Encounter aliens popping up in your Brash's stores and Beatles or whatever the record chains, and flogging this along. Another song that I really like is People.
Yes.
I love that song. And that was their second highest charting success in Australia, went to number 6. This was a perfect blend of techno pop and mid-driving rock, and it's about clones. And again, it falls way into that Gary Newman sort of wheelhouse about replicants and science fiction, Philip K. Dick or Isaac Asimov. But yeah, it's just got a great hooky vocal line, great melody, and it's musically and lyrically very curious. The lyrics in this band are quite, a notch above, worth a bit of a read.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say that this album is probably their most topical too, lyrically, of all of them. And just to give your viewers an idea of the sales too, this album went platinum in Australia. So
yep. That's not shabby. What's platinum?
Exactly.
What's platinum? Is that 70?
Yes, I think so.
That's good. But alrighty, so we go into the next album and things start to taper off a little bit, and we're talking about Shanghai. So I'm not a big fan of the album cover. It's very arty, but I don't quite know what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
I like the back cover. I think that's quite nice. But the there's a little bit, to my ears, a little bit of a drop off, but it's still very much in that that wheelhouse of new wave meets pub rock. What are the songs on this album that really prick your ears up?
Okay, well, this might be a bit of a left field choice, my first one, which is Mystery.
Yes.
Mystery, to me, it's a short, sharp song. It's only about 2.5 minutes long. It's got the kind of a ska feel to it, which is a bit different from what they were doing on the first 2 albums. It's just, again, it's the sort of thing that really hits my sort of musical pleasure buttons, sort of the cross of new wave and ska sort of thing that's going on in it. The lyric is quite intriguing too, I think, on that song. The other one that I really, really like is Caught in the Act. And this one, even though it probably predates most of their work, I think this sounds a little bit Oingo Boingo-y to me. Even though I think only the first Oingo Boingo album would have come out by this stage. Yeah, I don't know. It's got a feel that really appeals to me, that song. So it's just a little bit different from what they'd done before. I do agree that this one, like the first 2 albums, I could have picked literally any song. This one, there were probably 3 or 4 songs that were not in contention.
A bit of filler. Filler. Yeah.
So, but those are my 2 choices. Again, sort of, not really singles, I don't think. Well, maybe Caught in the Act was, I don't know. But certainly Mystery wasn't. So those are my 2 choices.
Well, they changed producer for this one. The producer was John Sayers, and he had a very much a heritage Aussie rock type of pedigree. He did Turn Up Your Radio by the Masters Apprentices, Spectrum, I'll Be Gone. In 1983, he did Mondo Rock, Come Said the Boy. So again, a person with high degree of pedigree, but a little bit more of the rock pedigree, so to speak. My choice is Falling In and Out. I think it's catchy, it's spiky, it's a perfect blend of pub rock meets synth pop or new wave. I love that staccato guitar. So if you just listen to the guitar track, it wouldn't feel out of place on an Angels album. And that's why I think this band is the perfect blend between new wave and pub rock. And this should have been a big hit, but it wasn't. And I think that a lot of the punters were going on to your In Excesses, your Men at Works, Australia Crawl, and My Sex were kind of left a little bit in the dust. The other song I was going to pick is also like yours, Caught in the Act. I like it. I like it a lot. It's spiky, melodic, and it's got kind of a really fresh techno pop rock feel. So yeah, that's my song that I picked off this album. But yeah, I think there's definitely a bit of a drop in quality between Space Race and Shanghai, and the chart placings are, a lot of the punters felt exactly the same. All right, so then we go to a couple of years to an album called Where Do They Go? Now, bit of a strange album cover. To me, it looks like it could be a Mink DeVille, or it could be a Dexy Midnight Runners album, not a My Six album.
Yeah.
What do you think? It's a bit of an odd one here.
It is. And I actually don't have a copy of this one. And funnily enough, this album, the drop-off again in the chart positionings was such. This album's never been released on CD, ever. So
not even in a 4-pack or a,
No, only the first 3 were in a 3-pack. This one's never been released on CD, at least not officially.
Right. Well, it was a commercial flop. It hit number 80. And in terms of sales in Australia, that would be not very good.
Well, no. But now, my 2 songs off this album, funnily enough, even though I would say of the 4 that we're looking at, this would be my number 4 if I were ranking them.
Yes.
I think this is definitely an album that makes a big veer into just sort of pop. And I don't have a problem with pop, but I don't think it's something that necessarily this band should necessarily be doing. But funnily enough, even though it's probably my least favorite of these 4 albums, it has my absolute all-time favorite My Sex song on it.
Bet I know what it is.
It's Blue Day.
Yes.
That song is absolutely achingly gorgeous. It starts off very dark and brooding, and then it gets into a more up-tempo feel as it goes along. But it's just an absolutely gorgeous slice of sort of mid-80s pop. And it's a song that a long time ago, I put together sort of like a 10-volume set of 80s music that I can play in the car and that sort of thing.
Yep.
This was the one My Sex song that ended up on the set, because it's just, yeah. I mean, it didn't do that well on the charts. It sort of was the mid-20s, I think like 24 or 25, something like that. Real shame, because I think it's an absolutely beautiful song. The other song that I picked from here is Only Thinking. And the reason I picked that one is that I think it's probably one of the songs on here that most retains that older My Sex sound. It still has the pop elements that most of this album does, but it still has some of that jaggedness and that quirkiness that those first 3 albums had. So those are my 2 choices.
Nice. Look, Blue Day to me is top 5 My Sex. It is a gorgeous song. And look, it's a song about depression, but it starts off very melancholy in a minor key, but suddenly it does this twist and becomes a personal empowerment anthem that I guess it's just a blue day and it's going to be no other way. So he's coming to realization that some days are diamonds, some days are rust, and just kind of shake it off and empower himself. So within the song, it changes the mood from something very introspective and brooding about depression into something that's empowering and quite positive. And to switch emotions within a song is quite unique and very clever. And I think this is one of their finest songs. It's a diamond in the rough. The album is quite average. It's in Dragon territory, and I mean bad Dragon. I love Dragon, but they're definitely going for that more pop, AM friendly radio. They've lost a lot of their edge. So all of that new waveness, the spiky guitars, it's all gone. They're using a lot of the sonics of the day, which date a lot of the material, you know, the gated drums, the cheesy synth lines. I picked another song called I Lose Control, which is a Kevin Stanton number. That was punchy. It's almost like an angry rocker. That's another one of those songs that kind of shines on this album. It's got this song is quite unique. It's got that highly compressed drum sound, a la the Phil Collins on In the Air Tonight, which seemed like after that song, every single pop song was starting to sample and use that sort of sound. But it's an angry, punchy rocker. And I wrote down that this starts off and sounds like a song that could be on Let's Dance, David Bowie. But beyond Blue Day and I Lose Control, I was kind of struggling a little bit. It's a bit average. So the production on this one was actually Bob Clearmountain. And you look at his CV, it's very impressive. Bowie, Roxy Music, The Pretenders. But yeah, I guess you got to just play with the material. Again, this album was very much caught up with was probably trailed in the dust behind, Men at Work, Midnight Oil, a lot of other bands, and My Sex were kind of yesterday's news.
Yeah. I think it's important to note too that Bob Clearmountain, big name in music, but he's much better known for his mixing than he is as a producer. So, maybe a little bit out of his depth in the production chair. Who knows?
Yep. I guess we have to tell the viewers what happened next. So there was the band folded up in 1983-84. So it definitely tapered off after this album. Steve Gilpin was in a couple of bands, and unfortunately he succumbed to the head injuries of a car accident in 1992. He was in a coma for a couple of months and passed away, which was very sad news. So I kind of think that they may have had a comeback, and My Sex did reunite. They had some members of the band. I know that their bass player, Don Martin, he of the very upright bass stance, was in one of the later lineups of My Sex, and they actually put an album out.
Yes.
And I'll segue through to you, maybe just a couple of words, what you think about the album.
This is the album here. It's called Not From Here. It was released in 2016. It's dedicated to Steve Gilpin, which is a nice little touch. You can see there it says dedicated to Steve Gilpin. The lead singer is Steve Balby, who you might know as he was the bass player in Noiseworks. But yeah, I mean, this had Don Martin and Murray Burns, the keyboard player from the original lineup of My Sex, were both on it. And Colin Bailey, who was sort of second guitar player on Where Do They Go? He was like joined as a sixth member of the band. The songs on here are not too bad. They don't quite recapture that sort of classic My Sex sound. The problem with this album is the production. It is possibly the most brick-walled CD I've ever listened to in my life. It is just so, it's just so loudness war over compressed that it gives you a headache listening to it. So it's not one I tend to pull out. I don't remember the last time I actually pulled it out and listened to it the whole way through, because unfortunately, as I say, even though some of the songs have some merit, the production is so bad that it just makes it unlistenable to my ears anyway.
Yeah, that's a shame. And I guess it's probably budgetary restrictions that they weren't able to do a decent mix, but that's quite unfortunate. My Six are still playing to this very day, but the lineup is completely removed from the originals because, as I said, there's a couple of members that have passed, and but I guess it's a bit of a tribute act when you think about it, but they're still keeping the flame alive, and My Six had some outstanding songs. Any other words that you want to sort of summarize to the viewers about your views about My Six? Personally, I think they're a band that people should discover because they had some really tasty songs.
Yeah, it's funny, something you were mentioning earlier in the show about them starting off as a prog band. I mean, that's what happened with Dragon too.
Yes.
And it's kind of what happened with Split Enz too. I mean, you listen to that first Split Enz album, it's very proggy. So it seems to be a sort of a New Zealand band trope, sort of start off in the early 70s as a prog band and then evolve into a much more sort of new wavy, poppy kind of band by the late 70s. Just a little observation there. But definitely the first two albums, I would say even the third one, are definitely well worth seeking out. As I said, there's a 3-pack of the first 3 albums that you can get on CD. You can get them in Australia for probably about $15, $20. Great investment, well worth it. But, also it's all on your listening app of choice. So, you can go and do that too. So I'd definitely go and follow it up. But those first 2 albums are classics.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also their greatest hits. And in some cases, they've been remastered and remixed. So, do yourself a favor. Check out My Six. Thank you, Bicyclelegs. You've done it again. That
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, great episode. Please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation. Please check out Bicyclelegs' channel. Lots of great content. I will put the website where you can check out his videos. And one thing's for sure, me and Bicyclelegs, we will do another show very soon. Cheers.